I always thought I had my life figured out. I'm a simple guy with simple goals. A decent savings tucked away, a garage business that's been doing well for years, and two boys I'd do anything for. I own the land my business stands on, so I'm not worried about rent hikes or sudden eviction notices. Stability, that's what I had. But stability, as I was about to learn, can be fragile. It started with a message, just a few words from my ex-wife. Out of the blue, she said she didn't want to see the boys anymore. No explanation, no warning, just a cold line cutting off contact. At first, I thought it might be temporary, maybe stress, or something else going on in her life. I tried calling, texting, even reaching out through friends. Nothing. The boys noticed. My youngest, Jamie, stopped asking about her after a while. Max, the older one, would sometimes look at me with eyes too heavy for a child, asking why their mom wouldn't come around anymore. I lied when I told them she was busy, but inside, I was worried. Those early weeks were strange. Quiet, but tense. I kept the boys busy with school, weekends at the park, and evenings watching their favorite cartoons. I was their anchor, but I could feel something was off, like the calm before a storm. And then came the first weekend she was supposed to pick them up. I waited on the driveway for hours, watching the road. No call, no message, no sign of her. The boys kept asking, and I didn't know what to say. The silence stretched, and it gnawed at me. The next weekend, the same. No show, no notice. The boys started to cry, scared and confused. Then, out of nowhere, a woman I didn't know appeared at my door. She said my ex-wife had sent her to pick up the boys. I didn't recognize her, and something about her felt wrong. I told her firmly to leave. I wasn't going to let strangers take my kids. That night, the police showed up. My ex-wife had called them, accusing me of kidnapping. The officers looked skeptical when I explained the situation. You haven't seen her in months, I said. I'm their primary parent. They didn't believe me at first. But when I showed them the boys' school uniforms and proof they were enrolled in my local school, their attitude changed reluctantly. It was the first time I felt the system wasn't on my side. But it was only the beginning. That night, I sat with the boys in the living room, their small heads resting on my chest as they finally fell asleep. I whispered promises that I would protect them, no matter what. Yet, deep down, I wondered what was coming next. The days after that police visit felt like walking on thin ice. Every step uncertain, every moment loaded with tension. I kept the boys close, watching them for any sign of fear or confusion. But they were brave kids, tougher than I thought. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was creeping in. My ex-wife's silence wasn't just distance. It felt like a weapon. I talked to my lawyer, desperate for some clarity, some way to protect the boys and myself. The news wasn't good. You can't just cut off her parental rights overnight, he said. In the UK, it's a legal process that can take months, sometimes years. And judges rarely approve giving up parental rights without solid cause. I swallowed hard. Months? Years? How was I supposed to keep my boys safe for that long, when their mother's moods and actions were so unpredictable? The lawyer also told me I could try to get a non-visitation order, something to keep her away if there was abuse or neglect, but there wasn't enough evidence. The boys were scared, but no visible bruises, no proof that would convince a court. It was like being trapped in a game where I was losing before it even began. Meanwhile, the weekends became a battleground. I refused to keep driving 4 hours round trip every weekend to drop the boys off, especially knowing they didn't want to go. Instead, I told my ex she or her parents would have to come pick them up. It was the only boundary I could set. The first weekend, they didn't show up. No call, no message, just silence. The second weekend, she told me she couldn't make it. Again, the boys were crushed. The third weekend was the worst. Out of the blue, some random woman showed up at my door, claiming she was sent to collect kids. I stood firm, told her to leave and never come back. That night, the police came again. My ex-wife had called once more, this time accusing me of kidnapping my own children. The officers were there quickly, flashing their badges and demanding I hand over the boys. I tried to explain calmly, but their faces told a different story, one of suspicion, skepticism, and frustration. I showed them the boys' school uniforms, proof of their enrollment, and the many messages and records I'd kept. Slowly, they backed off, but the damage was done. The boys started to break. They cried constantly, begging me not to send them back. Jamie would cling to me as if I were his last lifeline. Max, usually so strong, had nights when he couldn't sleep, haunted by nightmares and worries. It broke me in ways I didn't expect. I found myself consoling them endlessly, whispering that I was doing everything I could to protect them, to keep them safe. But the helplessness was crushing, and then the harassment started. It was subtle at first. Strange calls late at night, taxis ordered to my house when I wasn't home, and sudden, unexplained one-star reviews hitting my business. My garage, something I'd built from the ground up, was being targeted. My parents' house and car were hit too. It always happened on the Saturdays when the boys were supposed to be with their mom. I reported everything to the police, but it felt like I was talking to a wall. They took the reports, but never followed through. One night, I got proof. A video from a cousin of hers filming himself lurking near my house at 2 a.m., posted on TikTok like it was a trophy. I showed it to the cops. Their response was the same cold shrug. My world was spiraling. The legal system, the police, even the people around me seemed stacked against me. And the boys, the real victims, were trapped in the middle, scared, confused, and torn. Every day, I prayed for a break, for a moment of peace, for something to change. But I had no idea how dark the road ahead really was. The nights grew longer and the silence heavier. It wasn't just a lack of sleep that wore me down. It was a gnawing anxiety, the feeling that no matter what I did, I was losing ground. I spent hours pacing the house, checking the locks on the doors and windows. Every creak, every shadow made my heart leap. The boys tried to hide their fears, but I saw it in their eyes, the way they glanced nervously out the window, the way Jamie would clutch his blanket like a shield, the way Max asked me quietly if we were safe. And the truth was, I didn't know if we were. Work was suffering too. I own a small business, one I've poured my blood and sweat into for years. But lately, orders were dropping off, and customers started complaining about things that were usually fine. Someone had been leaving nasty, threatening messages on my business page. One customer even showed me a review that said, "Run while you still can. This place isn't safe." At first, I thought it was just random trolls. Then I found the scratches on my car, deep, deliberate, and the tire slashes. That was no accident. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, photos, voice recordings. I collected every piece of evidence I could get my hands on, hoping to build a case. But the police, they barely looked at any of it. They told me, without direct threats or proof linking your ex-wife or her family, there's nothing we can do. Frustration turned to desperation. I reached out to family solicitors, hoping for advice. Most of them told me the same thing. Courts are biased toward mothers. Parental rights aren't given up easily. And unless there's clear abuse or neglect, visitation stays. I tried explaining that this wasn't about love or visitation. It was about safety, about keeping my boys away from people who seemed bent on destroying us. One solicitor said something that cut deeper than I expected. Asterisk, you have to be squeaky clean. No anger, no retaliation. The courts want the children's best interests, and the mother is presumed the primary caregiver. If you act out, you risk losing everything. Asterisk. I nodded, but inside I was boiling. I wanted to scream, to fight back. But I knew if I lost my temper, I'd give them ammunition. So I bottled it all up. At home, I tried to keep things normal for boys. We watched Christmas movies early, made hot chocolate, and built blanket forts in the living room. For a few moments, I could pretend we were safe. But then the messages came. Late-night texts from unknown numbers threatening me. Calls with silence on the other end. Facebook messages from fake profiles accusing me of horrible things. My ex-wife herself stopped texting, except when it was about the kids. But even then, the tone was cold, clipped like a blade wrapped in silk. One day, I decided to visit her parents. I needed to know if they were involved, if they were the ones driving this harassment. I left the boys with my parents, took a deep breath, and walked up to their door. They invited me in with cautious smiles. I pulled out my phone, showed them the evidence, screenshots, videos, recorded calls. Their faces flickered between shock, discomfort, and something I couldn't place. Then, unexpectedly, her mother started to cry. She whispered, "We had no idea. She's been different, angry, secretive. We thought it was just the stress of the divorce." Her father looked away. They promised me nothing more would happen. I left feeling uneasy, because promises in this war were cheap. That night, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Asterisk, watch your back. This isn't over. Asterisk, I showed the boys, tried to reassure them that I'd protect them no matter what. But deep down, I knew the cracks were forming in my armor, and the storm was just beginning. The morning after my visit to her parents, I woke with a knot in my stomach tighter than ever before. It felt like I was standing on shifting ground, unsure what would come next, and knowing I had little control. I poured myself a coffee, my hand shaking slightly, and sat down at the kitchen table, trying to make sense of it all. The boys were still asleep upstairs. I wanted to believe we were safe, at least for now, but the messages, the vandalism, the silent threats weighed heavily on me. Days passed without incident, but the tension didn't ease. Every creak in the house made me jump. Every unexpected noise a reminder that we were not alone in this fight. I decided up my game. I installed extra security cameras around the house. Not the cheap ones you buy from a big box store, but professional-grade cameras with night vision and motion detection. I was determined to catch anyone who dared come near us. I even set up notifications to my phone, so if any movement was detected, I would know immediately. I spent hours going through the footage, but nothing, or so I thought. One night, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed, a motion alert from the backyard camera. I froze, heart pounding. Swiping open the video, I saw a shadow move slowly near the garden gate. I paused it and zoomed in. It was a figure, too tall to be one of the kids, wearing dark clothes, a hood pulled tight over their head. I grabbed my jacket, ready to confront whoever it was, but by the time I stepped outside, the figure was gone. No footprints, no sign of forced entry, just a lingering sense of dread. I called the police again. This time I had footage, but their response was the same. Without a clear crime being committed, we can't act on this. I felt the familiar frustration rise again, but I swallowed it down. I had to keep my cool, for the boys, for myself. Days later, I got a call from my solicitor. She signed the divorce papers. My chest tightened. After months of battling back and forth, it was finally happening. The formal end to a marriage that felt more like a war zone. But it wasn't just about the divorce anymore. It was about the future of my boys. The solicitor said the papers included a visitation agreement. 1 week in a month with their mother. I nodded, though it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I wanted to protect them from everything. But the law said I couldn't stop her from seeing them. That night, I sat in the living room with Jamie and Max. They asked, "Dad, when will Mom see us again?" I forced a smile and said, "Soon, I promise." But I knew that promise was fragile, because even as the divorce became official, the threats didn't stop. In fact, they escalated. One morning, I woke to find my car tires slashed again. My heart sank. The boys saw the damage and clung to me tighter. I started to wonder, was this just about custody, or was it something darker? I decided I needed to confront her family again. Maybe they didn't know what was really going on. Maybe they could help stop this madness. I arranged another meeting. This time, I brought every piece of evidence I had collected, the screenshots, the recordings, the CCTV footage. I laid it all out on their kitchen table. Her mother's eyes filled with tears again. Her father's jaw tightened. Then her uncle, who had always been quiet, finally spoke. "I don't like what I'm hearing. This isn't the family I know." But even as he said it, I could see the doubt in his eyes. And I knew, deep down, that the storm wasn't over. Because in the shadows of this family, secrets were waiting to be uncovered. And the truth, when it came, would shake us all to the core. The days following that uneasy meeting with her parents and uncle felt like walking on glass. Every step was cautious, every word measured. I couldn't tell if I'd shaken their faith in her, or if I'd just stirred up something worse. At home, the boys tried their best to keep life normal, but the weight of everything pressed down on all of us. Jamie, usually the chatterbox, was quieter than ever. Max kept asking if Mom was angry at me. The way they looked at me sometimes, it was like they were trying to read the cracks in my armor, searching for answers I didn't have. I tried to focus on work, but the harassment hadn't stopped. In fact, it was escalating in ways I hadn't expected. One afternoon, I walked into my office to find the front door unlocked. Nothing was stolen, but papers were scattered everywhere like a tornado had hit. My heart raced. Someone had been inside when I wasn't looking. I called the police. Again, they took a report, but their words were the same. Without clear proof of intent or theft, it's hard to act. I was alone in this fight. Late one night, as I sat reviewing footage from the cameras, I noticed something strange, a flash of movement on the driveway camera around midnight. A car pulled up, but only briefly. The license plate was obscured. I zoomed in, enhanced the video, but it was useless. I was chasing ghosts. The next morning, I got a message on social media. A screenshot from someone claiming to be a mutual acquaintance of my ex's. It was a message chain between her and a close friend plotting something I couldn't believe at first. Plans to sabotage my business. Plans to make me lose the kids. Plans to ruin me. I stare at the screen, heart pounding, disbelief turning to rage. I reached out to my solicitor and asked if this could be grounds to revisit the custody arrangement. His answer was frustratingly familiar. Unless there's direct proof that the children are in danger, the court won't change visitation orders. I felt trapped, like I was stuck in a game with rules I didn't write and couldn't change. One evening, as I was driving the boys to visit their grandmother, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Leave it alone," a distorted voice whispered. Then the line went dead. I sat frozen behind the wheel, gripping it tightly. The boys asked if everything was okay. I forced a smile and said yes. But I was anything but. That night, I took all the evidence I had, the screenshots, the videos, the recordings, and made a decision. I was going to show her family everything. Not just her parents and uncle, everyone who could help stop this nightmare. I arranged a meeting at a local cafe. When I laid the evidence out, faces around the table shifted. Some expressed shock, others anger. One of her cousins, who I'd never trusted, suddenly looked very nervous. He kept glancing at his phone, avoiding eye contact. It was then I realized the people closest to her might not be on my side. Maybe some were part of the plan. Or worse, maybe some had their own reasons for wanting me out of the picture. The truth was deeper, darker than I'd imagined, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what was coming next. After that meeting at the cafe, nothing felt the same. I had hoped that showing her family all the proof would make them see reason, make them stop the madness. But the reality was far more complicated and far more dangerous. Her parents were polite, even apologetic on the surface, but their eyes told another story. There was cold calculation there, like they were weighing every word, every photo, every clip, deciding how to spin it, how to protect their own. I left that meeting with a bitter taste in my mouth and a sinking feeling in my gut. For days after, the harassment didn't just continue. It evolved. Late-night phone calls with silence on the other end. Strange cars parked outside my house for hours, their engines idling. My business was targeted again. This time, someone spray-painted graffiti on the walls. "Deadbeat Dad." My parents' home wasn't spared either. Their mailbox was smashed. Their car tires slashed. It was no longer just about me. The people I loved were being dragged into this war. The boys noticed. One night, as I tucked them into bed, Jamie whispered, "Dad, why do they hate you?" Max's lip trembled as he clung to his blanket. I didn't have an answer. I only knew I couldn't let them see how scared I really was. I called my lawyer again. We talked strategy. He reminded me that the courts favored mothers in custody disputes, unless I had concrete evidence that the children were in danger. But gathering that evidence was almost impossible. And even if I did, the legal process would drag on for months, maybe years. Meanwhile, my ex was quietly moving forward. She signed the divorce papers out of nowhere, pushing everything into motion faster than I expected. The finality of it hit me harder than I thought it would. I was officially alone, and she was still in their lives. Then came the unexpected twist that caught me completely off guard. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, a voice I never expected. Her. She wanted to talk. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, unsure if this was a trap or a chance. We arranged to meet in a public place, a small park near the boys' school. When I saw her sitting there, looking tired but calm, part of me wanted to believe she'd changed. She said she wanted to discuss the custody arrangement. She said she wanted to make things easier for the boys. I was skeptical but agreed to listen. As we talked, her tone shifted. She revealed something I never saw coming. She admitted there were people in her family pushing her to fight me. People who didn't care about the boys. People who want to control everything, including the custody. She said she felt trapped, scared, and unsure who to trust. For a moment, I almost believed her. But then she dropped the real bombshell. She said she might be willing to reduce her visitation to once a month, but only if I agreed to drop all legal actions against her family. It was an impossible choice. Give up my fight to protect my boys, or keep battling and risk losing them entirely. As I sat there, staring at her, I realized this war wasn't just about custody. It was about control, power, and pain. And no one was winning. After that tense conversation in the park, I found myself trapped in a whirlwind of emotions I wasn't prepared for. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to stop the war tearing our family apart. But every fiber of my being screamed caution. The choice she laid out was brutal. Sacrifice my fight against her family's manipulation, or risk losing the boys altogether. I spent nights pacing the living room, haunted by the echoes of my son's questions. Asterisk. Why do they hate you? Asterisk, asterisk. Is Mom mad at you? Asterisk, asterisk. Will she come back? Asterisk, I want to give them answers. But all I had were more questions, and a crushing fear of what might come next. I started digging deeper, determined to uncover every hidden layer of this mess. I contacted a private investigator, someone my lawyer recommended, a man who had worked on cases involving family disputes and hidden agendas. I hoped this was the key to exposing what was really going on behind closed doors. Weeks passed, each day stretching longer than the last. The investigator sent me updates, cryptic but disturbing. There were secret meetings between my ex's family and people I didn't recognize. Whispers of financial pressure, threats made under the table, and, most chilling of all, hints that my ex might not be entirely a victim herself, that she might be playing a part in the very schemes I was trying to expose. The lines between truth and deception blurred. I began to question everything I thought I knew about her family, even about myself. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call. The investigator's voice was low, tense. Asterisk, I have something you need to see. Meet me tomorrow. Discreet location. Asterisk, I barely slept that night. The next day, I met him at a quiet cafe. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside were photographs, documents, and messages. Photos showed my ex meeting secretly with a man connected to some of the people who had been harassing me. The documents hinted at financial transactions that didn't add up. Large sums moving between accounts linked to her family. And the messages, well, the messages were the worst. Plans plotted and executed to keep me isolated and discredited. I felt the ground shift beneath me. If she was involved, even partly, then everything I'd fought for, the custody, the divorce, the peace, was hanging by a thread. But I couldn't act on this alone. I took the evidence to my solicitor, who warned me about the risks. Asterisk, this could backfire. If it looks like you're trying to smear her without solid proof, you could lose everything. Asterisk, I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. At home, the boys seemed to sense the tension. One night, Jamie burst into my room, tears streaming. Asterisk, Dad, why does Mom hate you? Why won't she just be nice? Asterisk, I pulled him close, fighting back my own tears. Asterisk, Sometimes, kids, grown-ups have problems they don't know how to fix. But I promise, I'll always fight to keep you safe. Asterisk, that promise felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter at the slightest touch. Days later, a new twist came crashing down. I got a call from a family friend, someone who had stayed quiet all this time. They said they had information that could change everything. I met with them late at night, in a dimly lit park. What they revealed shook me to the core. My ex had been keeping a secret, a hidden relationship with someone whose motives were unclear. This wasn't just about custody or money anymore. It was a tangled web of betrayal, lies, and power plays that I was only beginning to unravel. As I walked away from that meeting, the cold night air bit into my skin, but it was nothing compared to the chill settling deep inside my chest. The war wasn't over. It was just getting darker. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together, but the full picture was darker and more complicated than I could have imagined. That secret relationship my family friend revealed wasn't just some fling. It was a man connected to people who've been behind the harassment and threats, a man with a long history of manipulating family disputes for his own gain. He'd been playing both sides, using my ex and her family to further his own agenda. When I confronted her with this knowledge, I didn't expect the explosion that followed. She didn't deny it. Instead, she broke down, revealing layers of fear and desperation I'd never seen. She'd felt trapped, controlled by her family and by this man. Her actions, twisted as they were, came from a place of self-preservation, not malice. That confession didn't erase the damage, but it changed the game. Together, awkwardly, painfully, we agreed to expose the truth. We gathered everything: evidence, witness statements, recordings. I worked with my solicitor to present the case to the court, not as enemies, but as parents desperate to protect our children from a fallout. The judge listened, really listened. For the first time, custody was reevaluated, and a new arrangement put in place. One focused on the boys' well-being. The harassment stopped. The threats faded into silence. Most importantly, the boys began to heal. Watching them laugh again, seeing them safe and loved, gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. But the scars remain. The war left marks not just on my family, but on my soul. I learned that sometimes the people you fight the hardest against are also the ones most in need of help, and that the truth, no matter how painful, is the only way forward. As for me, I'm still rebuilding, one day at a time, but now I do it with hope, and with the knowledge that even the darkest battles can end with a new beginning.